Improving your nutrition and eating habits can feel like a complex task at first. Many of us jump right into the fine details about the specific foods, meal timing, and which supplements to start taking. We tend to then lose sight of the bigger picture. In this video, we're going to be talking about nutrition tips for improving overall health. This is for those of you who are looking for simple ways to make positive changes to your nutrition so that you can get results like more energy, better sleep, better digestion, improved mood, and overall longevity. And of course, this also includes health markers as measured by blood work. It's also looking at improving your physical fitness and improving your mental health as well. Basically, what I'm talking about is how you can feel good as a human being rather than just focusing simply on the purposes of changing how you look. And don't be fooled, you don't need to be strictly eating clean and making massive changes in order to see these positive benefits. This is not one of those videos. You can greatly improve all of these aspects in your own health by making small changes that have big returns. And that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Now, let's jump straight into it. Step number one is going to focus around how you're eating. This is the first step and probably one of the most important ones. It's the one you have the most control over and you can implement the most often, no matter where you go. Firstly, there's eating speed, meaning how fast we actually eat the food. This is important to help us recognize our physical hunger cues, and especially important if you have problems with overeating. Eating slowly also helps improve your digestion by actually giving your body time to break down the food that's coming in. When we eat too fast, our stomach has little to no time to break down all this food and it goes into overdrive, having to work through breaking all that food down, which can cause us discomfort. So the initial stages of digestion actually start in the mouth with chewing our food. Now, it sounds silly and it sounds very basic, and that's because it is. But if we're eating our food too quickly, there's a good chance that we're not actually chewing our food properly, which is missing that first step of digestion. What happens then is we rely on our stomach to do most of the heavy lifting. This can then result in feeling bloated, having excess gas, or even feeling really sluggish after you've eaten. It's our body basically having to work overtime to digest what we've just consumed. When we slow down our eating speed, we actually help our stomach do its job more efficiently, especially if we've chewed our food properly, meaning that a lot of those issues that we faced before usually start to resolve themselves on their own because our stomach is able to better handle the food that's coming in. So how to eat slowly in practice? Firstly, this is going to take a little bit of work. You're going to have to slow down on purpose and remove as many distractions as possible, as these tend to lend to speeding up our eating speed. If we're eating at the computer or watching TV, we're not actually focused on the food that we're eating, and we're more in a position to therefore speed up as a result. What works for you will be individual, but here's some things that you can try. Using a meal timer and aiming for your meal to take you at least 20 minutes to eat. Drinking sips of water between bites, or simply putting your cutlery down between bites and having a short break. Or you can even pace yourself with someone who you know is a slower eater. Match their speed. Another relatively simple concept that has a huge benefit on our health is eating according to our physical hunger cues most of the time. If we're following our hunger cues about 80% of the time, the other 20% won't matter as much. Listening to our hunger cues helps to avoid overeating, which is essentially what causes weight gain. It also helps your body learn when it needs food and what that actually feels like as a sensation. Some of the common physical hunger signals to look out for are things like a rumbling stomach or an empty feeling in your stomach. But again, your physical hunger cues might be different to someone else. So the next time you haven't eaten in a while, take note of what you're actually feeling in your body. Sometimes initially it can be really hard to understand these cues because we've spent so long eating according to the time of day or just out of conditioning with things like eating due to emotions, if we're bored, if we're sad, if we're lonely. So it can actually take a little bit of time to tune back in and listen out for those physical hunger cues. So be patient with it and practice over time. The more you practice at it, the more in tune you'll get and the better you'll be able to follow them. Next, we're going to look at what you're eating. Food choice level ups. When it comes to your health, what you eat also does play a role. Consistently eating a wide variety of minimally processed foods that are also high in a variety of nutrients will influence our mental and physical health much more than any specific one food on its own. But rather than jumping in and changing everything all at once and overhauling your entire diet, I recommend starting with small changes one at a time. What is practically doable always beats what is theoretically optimal. What you can do consistently every single day is going to have the most impact on your quality of life, because what good is having the perfect diet if you struggle to follow it? Another way to look at it is thinking on a continuum. How can you get just one step better each day? A really simple way to level up your foods is to eat more whole foods that are more nutrient dense. These are foods that are as close to they would be if they were farmed or harvested. And you don't need to worry too much about whether something is a whole food or slightly altered if you're unsure. In general, you just want to think about simple upgrades that you can make to the meals that you already eat. For example, instead of getting packet potato chips out of the frozen section at the supermarket, why not get some potatoes and cut them up and make them yourself? And one of the main roadblocks to this is most people think that it's just going to take too much time to prepare all this food from scratch. And while yes, there is a bit of prep time involved in preparing food from scratch, you can also purchase some of the pre-prepared foods that have already been cut up for you. Things like pre-packed salads, pre-packed roasting dishes with different vegetables on there, or even frozen fruit and vegetables. This can save you time and it will allow you to eat more of these foods more often. Frozen and canned foods are also a good option because they keep for a really long time, meaning that you're always going to have these on hand. Once you find a few healthy go-to meals that you like, it becomes way easier to prepare them much faster. When considering our overall health and what specific foods to start adding into our diet, fruits and vegetables are going to be a key. In addition to that, protein is also going to be one of the macronutrients that we want to start including more of. This becomes even more important as we get older. Our bodies simply use protein as the building blocks to repair and regenerate our cells and tissue. If we don't get enough protein through our diet, our body can actually break down existing protein in our body from our muscles and different parts of the body to get its requirements. This can lead to problems later on in life as our muscle decreases, as does our strength as a result. This then makes things like falls when we're older much more damaging to us. Tips for implementing this. Start off by keeping a really simple food journal to get a snapshot of what you're already eating. Start for about a week. Preferably you want to go for about 2 weeks to account for any differences in your schedule and what you might be eating week to week. It doesn't need to include exact quantities and measurements, so you don't need things like scales. It's just a rough recall of what you've been eating and drinking so that you can see a snapshot. Then you're going to look for some key meals. Lunch and dinner are great options here. How could you upgrade these meals just a little bit? Could you include one vegetable or one piece of fruit in each of them? Are you including a source of protein in your meals? If not, what could you add to boost the protein content of that particular meal? Could you change one thing for another without changing the taste too much? Such as changing from white rice to brown rice so that you can increase the amount of fiber that you're taking in. Some things you might consider are fiber content. This is really important for our digestive system, so looking for ways to increase our fiber content slightly is going to help with our digestion. Protein content, which we spoke about a little before. How can you include more sources of protein in your meals? Things like meat, fish, eggs, tofu, lentils, beans are all high sources of protein. The next one is vitamins and minerals. More fruits and vegetables will give you a much healthier dose of vitamins and minerals anyway. These are what your body uses on a daily basis just to function properly. If you're lacking in a particular vitamin or an area of vitamins, this can affect your energy because it's affecting your physiology, how your body operates day to day. And another one is less processing involved in the making of that food. So, as we said before, we want to think about a continuum. How can we move from processed foods, if we're eating those, to slightly less processed along the way? How can we get back to what it used to look like when it was either farmed or harvested, if that's possible with that particular food? The more processed a food is, typically the less nutrient dense it is. Make a note of what works for you and what doesn't. Treat this like an experiment rather than trying to get it perfect from day one. Remember, you're trying to find a solution that works for you, and this can take a little bit of time. And also keep in mind, what works for you might look a little bit different from what works for other people and their situations, and that's okay. Your sleep quality and quantity. This affects your nutrition and eating behaviors too. Getting less than optimal sleep, such as between 5 and 6 or even less than that, as opposed to 7 to 8 hours of sleep, impacts the internal workings of your body. A few key hormones become affected when we're sleep deprived. Ghrelin levels rise. This is the hormone that makes you feel physically hungry, meaning you're going to start to feel more hungry if you haven't slept enough. Leptin levels fall. This is the hormone that tells your body that you've had enough food, you're full, you don't need any more food. This can also mean that you'll feel less satisfied after your meals if you're sleep deprived, which leads you to wanting to eat more and more. Endocannabinoids increase. So this is an interesting one. This actually increases the perception of pleasure from the food that you do eat, which is also one of the reasons why we want to eat more food when we're really tired. So in a nutshell, in a sleep deprived state, we're more primed to turn to snacks that are often higher in calories. Your body thinks it's hungry, so you're craving those things that are high in sugar, fat, and salt. The quality of your decisions is also impaired as well when we're tired, leading you to become more likely to make poorer nutritional choices even when your intentions are good. Also, in sleep deprived states, you're less likely to move your body throughout the day. Your body's trying to conserve energy, which is pretty smart. But unfortunately, this means that we move less as a result when we're tired. All in all, a lack of sleep can drastically influence your nutritional choices and eating behaviors, also your health overall, and your ability to make good choices. While we're not going to go into great detail about how to improve your sleep in this particular video, here are some simple tips to improve your sleep. First up, we have sleep hygiene. This is the conditions you create and the routines and systems that you have to ensure that you get a good night's rest. So this can include things like dimming the lights about an hour before you go to bed, reading before you sleep, and reducing the amount of screen time right before bed. The next one is reframing your thoughts and beliefs about getting enough sleep. Thoughts you have can create anxiety while you're trying to sleep, which in turn creates a stress response, which then just wakes you up, which is exactly what you don't want to be happening. Over time, we then begin to label ourselves as a bad sleeper, and we create an identity around that. So some examples of reframing our thoughts are things like, instead of "I'll never sleep well again," we can instead say, "I might lose sleep occasionally, but other nights I'll be okay." The idea here is to start telling yourself a new story to create a new identity so that we don't start to embody the identity that we don't actually want. If you do wake up in the middle of the night, have a reframe ready for any thoughts that might come up for you. And rest assured, your body will fall asleep eventually. At the end of the day, everyone sleeps, even on those nights where we feel like we will never fall asleep. The next one is to have consistent sleep and wake times. Sleeping in or forcing yourself to try and sleep earlier can interrupt your sleep drive, which is basically a biological hunger for sleep. This can interrupt the subsequent night's sleep if your body isn't actually hungry for sleep. Spend only as much time in bed as you need to sleep, usually between 7 to 9 hours. You want to start training your brain to get into a consistent routine where you're in bed, so therefore you're ready to sleep. This can help us get to sleep and also avoid waking up and staying awake during the night. Find a schedule that works for you. If you feel that your energy is better in the mornings, it's likely that having an earlier sleep time and an earlier wake time is going to work better for you. The same is applied in reverse. There's no right or wrong, it's purely down to individual preference. When it comes to sleep, try to focus on what you can control and let go of what you can't control. You can't control the exact amount of hours of sleep that you get, but you can control the time that you go to bed and the routines and systems you use before sleep to ensure that you do get good sleep. So changing or upgrading your nutrition doesn't need to be super complex or filled with strict rules. Simpler is often better. Remember to start with those big rocks. These are the habits and the routines that you're already doing each day. If we can make small changes here, this will have a flow-on effect to everything else that we do. Things such as your eating speed, your food choice level ups, and your sleep routines will have a big effect. Once you've found a way to optimize the big rocks, then you can turn your attention onto the finer details. Things like very specific food choices, even things like supplements. The aim here is to make small and consistent changes over time so that your new habits and routines actually stick around. It's no good overhauling everything and then the next month being right back to where you started. So that's it for this video. I hope that was really helpful. I hope you got some great takeaways that you can implement as of today. If you have any questions, leave those down below in the comment section. If you did like this video, you might also like this video here, which other people have found helpful too. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.